Hey everyone, welcome. This is Jason Clemmons, Doctor of Chiropractic at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, and this is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. I got to check real quickly, make sure I hit the button twice. Got to make sure I didn't kick everybody from social media off of the show right quick. Hope you guys had a great weekend. I had a great weekend. My son came home for Thanksgiving. My daughter came home from New York for her trip to go watch the Red Raiders play basketball, and she worked that trip. So it's good to have the kids home. Red Raiders won a football game. The Kansas City Chiefs won a football game. Dallas Cowboys won a football game. The TCU Horned Frogs won a football game. So I don't know what else. I mean, in our house could have been better. It was like, wow, everybody was home. Everybody's happy and ready for this week. So hope you guys are great. I hope you guys have had a good weekend, and I hope you had a good Monday. Hope all you guys who are off work and getting ready to go travel, and all you school teachers and kids and all that stuff. I hope you guys are going to enjoy this week. Please be careful out there when you travel. I know a lot of you guys are waiting on the 2 days to get by so that y'all can go enjoy your families and have a little break and all that sort of thing. So I know it's busy. Tonight we're going to take health to church. We're going to finish up part 3 of Running on Empty. And it might have been one of the best sermons I ever heard in my whole entire life. Tommy Politz over at Hillside Church did a fantastic job wrapping all this up, and it was really good. I know that there is no possible way, unless the Lord is going to take over this show, that I'm going to be able to even get close to as good as he did last night. But man, yesterday. But man, what an awesome sermon that was. So that's what we do on our Monday night show. We take health to church. We're trying to bring you some peace. If you're running on empty, if you're worn out, if you're tired, if you need some, you need some help in this time of year. You need some help to try to get yourself back on track, and you need to just find some peace. That's what the show is about tonight. So just want you to know that, and let's make it a few announcements real quick before we get into it, because I think it's going to be I think we got a lot to talk about, and I think it's going to be a great show. So the first announcement is if you guys still got time, I think, to get in and to go to the Walk by Faith Facebook page and comment thankful and tag a friend for your chance to win one of 2 $300 cash prizes. Brought to you by Walk by Faith Radio, 98.7, 1420 AM. Listen to McDermott at Large, Michael McDermott from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. and The Thin Line with Ken Adams from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. daily for details, and sponsored by First United Bank, Southwest Aqua Sports, and I think Tri-United Auto. So if you want to have a chance to win $300, go to the Walk by Faith Facebook page and comment thankful. So that's one. Second one is, don't forget, Hillside Church is doing Sharing Tree. You still got a couple days to get that done. If you're interested, you can go to Hillside Online /Sharing Tree. Click whatever city you're in, and if you'd like to give some a needy kid a gift, so that's still an option out there. And if you're interested in doing that, those guys would appreciate it, and I know the kids would appreciate it. So that's for Christmas, though. You got to just have that in by December 1st. So you still got a few days to do that. But that's a Christmas present. So we got the Thanksgiving giveaway. I'm sure it's going to be done, I don't know, I guess on Thanksgiving. I don't know when it's going to be done, but you still got a chance to enter that. And then the Sharing Tree is the other one. Real quickly, we were super busy today because we're kind of smashing a week's worth of work into really 2.5 days. And my Tuesdays are kind of shortened anyway. And so we've been super busy, but I just had, before we get into taking health to church, I just had a really one main comment. There were some really good ones today, but there was one main comment that I thought I just would add, because one of the guys said, he came in last week. He's been having lots of trouble with his shoulder. We worked on his shoulder, and he said, he's like, it was doing really good. And then yesterday, it just started hurting again. And then today, it just went away. And he's like, how does that happen? How does that happen that I have pain in my shoulder one day, and then the very next day, I don't have any pain in my shoulder? And I said, well, just remember, and this was my clinical answer. It's not my researched scientific answer, but it's my clinical answer. And it's like, just remember, that when you say the word pain, it's in your brain. So if you cannot, you can't. Another lady asked me, like, she's like, I got this pain in my shoulder. She's like, how do you know if you have a pinched nerve? And it's like, well, you have nerve involved if you feel it. That's for sure that there's a nerve involved. But his statement was my shoulder pain, right? And I was like, just remember, just remember, you have a shoulder. That's a bad arm right there. But you have a shoulder, and that shoulder is connected through a nerve to your brain. Sorry, I can't get to my my colors here. But you've got some sort of, we call it noxious stimuli. You got some sort of irritation. There's some sort of irritation that's going on in the shoulder at the nerve ending that's firing into the brain itself. And then the brain has a map of your body, and then the brain has your shoulder in that map. And so your brain detects, shoulder pain. But it's not shoulder pain. It's connection, it's irritation of the nerve, in either a physical or chemical irritation of the nerve that is sending the signal up into the brain. And if it goes away, if all of a sudden the shoulder pain goes away, then that means that you stopped sending the signal to the brain. Or the brain does have the ability to override it, and you can shut the pain off in the brain itself. That's the old Forrest Gump deal, getting shot in the buttocks deal. That's like that used to happen to us on the football field all the time. You would just shut it off. You didn't even have a definition of pain because you were so focused on something else that you had the exact noxious stimuli coming from your shoulder, but you didn't even. You just dampened it immediately in your brain. You just turned it off, right? Well, I think in this particular case, with this particular shoulder, I don't think it's necessarily getting shut off in the brain. I think that something changes in the shoulder. It's either a physical component or it's a chemical component that stops its noxious stimuli from the end of the nerve that's going into the brain. And that's and I know what he was wanting me to say, he was wanting me to answer, was he was wanting me to tell him what was the noxious stimuli that went away. Like, I get it. I get that he was trying to get me to say that, and I don't know the answer to that question. Like, how do I know? If I just know that the mechanism of the way that we created the pain, there had to have been some sort of disruption in that mechanism. He's like, man, my shoulder just yesterday it hurt, and then today it just doesn't hurt, and it doesn't hurt right now. And he said, I was really hoping it would hurt when I came in, so you'd work on it some more. And I'm like, well, this is a wellness clinic, so I can work on your shoulder even when it doesn't hurt because we know that it's not functioning properly. See, that's a strange concept for people to grasp. You don't have to have a hurt shoulder to get me to work on your shoulder because I can look at range of motion. I can look at muscle tone. I can look at brain function. There's lots of ways we can evaluate whether or not your shoulder's working good without you telling me, oh, it feels fine today. Well, just because it feels fine today doesn't mean it's working good. That concept is really hard for people to understand too. Just because your shoulder feels fine does not mean that it's functioning well. What's the range of motion in your shoulder? What's the strength in your shoulder? What is the positioning of your shoulder? What's the posture of your shoulder? If your posture is rolled forward and your shoulder is rolled forward, it doesn't mean that just because your shoulder doesn't hurt doesn't mean that it's functioning properly. We still want it to get in its proper position. We still want you to have full range of motion. All those things are important, right? So, something irritated the end of the nerve, and that irritation was sent through the nerve to the brain, and the brain said that was painful in the brain. Just remember that. Just remember that. It's very, I think it will help you, because then you can, I think the more you know about it, the more power you have to control what's going on right there, right? I think me personally, I think that's a good thing. Okay, let's get into it, because I'm super excited about this, and what I'm going to do with tonight's show is I'm just going to read through my notes, and I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to interject as best I can the health parts from what I took. So remember, if you're new to the show, what we do on Monday night is we take the sermon from Sunday and we bring it onto the show. We call it Taking Health to Church. We bring it onto the show, and we are going to try to see if we can take this information that we learned from church yesterday and apply it to health. That's what we're trying to do, right? So I'm not trying to preach, even though I kind of am. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm surely not critiquing the preaching that's going on, even though I might every once in a while do that too, because I can't help it. But what I'm trying to do is share this information. But this is so, and this is, if you guys haven't, you guys know that are here on this, or most of you guys that know that are here tonight, that I'm a Christian guy. I believe that Jesus is who he said he was. And I believe that I can learn a lot about health by understanding what this Bible is. And so I really believe that there's health information in this Bible. Okay? So I'm talking to you tonight as if you are a believer as well. If you're not a believer, welcome to the show anyway. Just sit and listen. Maybe it'll rub off. Maybe something about health will rub off on you. And I'm not trying to convert you. I'm just trying to share the news with you. That's it. Okay? And I want to share this, but this was done so great. So 3 weeks ago, we started running on empty. We didn't. Hillside Church did. They started the sermons running on empty. For all the people that are tired and exhausted and worn out and they have no hope, and it's starting to mess with them. It's starting to cause stress in your life. It gives you a sense of hopelessness, and you just need somebody to talk to you. You need something. You're out of gas. Okay. And we talked about, over the last 3 weeks, they've talked about 3 words. They said they use it as kind of like your spiritual dashboard. And the 3 words are the Shema, the Shabbat, and the Shalom. And the Shema means to listen to the Lord. And Shabbat is rest in the Lord. And Shalom is peace with the Lord. And so, I want to just go through it the way that it was presented, and then I'll pull out the pieces of health that we're talking about, okay? I'm not trying to reproduce the sermon, but this one it was so good. So we started with listening to the Lord, and they started in Deuteronomy 6:4, and it was the prayer of, "Hear, O Israel," and it just basically says, love the Lord with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. and it talks about the commandments and the 10 commandments that were given to the people and what they were supposed to do with them, and talk about them, and when you're with each other and share those things. And I really started that. And it's funny, it's like they I found myself getting caught back up in the world after about 10 to 12 days of that. I did it strictly very well for about 10 or 12 days. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh man, I forgot to say that prayer before I went to bed. And then I got up the next morning and then I was just like, oh man, I forgot to do that. And then pretty soon it just like started fading away. I could feel it start to fade away. And I was like, dude, that's so interesting how that works, right? Listen to the Lord. Listen to the Lord. Love the Lord with all your heart. That's super hard to do. It's really, I have found it to be hard to do, right? And then the next week we got into Shabbat and we started he started talking about rest. And the main part of the story was when you put your work down and you hear his voice, today, if you hear his voice, enter his rest. Today. And it gave you scripture so you guys could go back. You could go back to the lectures at Hillside Online and listen to these sermons for the last 3 weeks, and they'll explain it way better than me. But I've always known that one way back for 20 something years now. I've known that scripture. Today, if you hear his voice, enter his rest. You can have rest any day, any time. You can have rest. You can enter that rest. But one thing you got to do is you got to lay your own works down. And God rested on the seventh day. He worked for 6 days and he rested on the seventh day. Not because he was tired and not because he was running on empty, but because he was done with his work. And that's I think the lesson from a guy that works a lot. I think that's a lesson. If I'm doing my work, it wears me out. If I'm doing God's work, I have unlimited supply of energy. Like it's just that you just never get tired of doing God's work because you have all of the energy of the universe right there, just going. And so if you can enter his rest. And then this last one is peace. And I can feel it. I can feel it coming. I can feel I'm gonna have. I just know that this is gonna be emotional, but I can feel it coming because the peace is so interesting. So the pastors talked about what would you define as peace, the lack of peace. If you were going to, if we were going to talk to each other and we were going to say about what would it take for us to get peace? What would we say, right? And he went through some things. He's like, what about all the war, right? If we just said, if tomorrow the war in Ukraine was over, the Russians and the Ukraine just ceasefire and that was over, and then the war with Israel and Iran and all the rest of them that Israel is fighting with, Hamas and all the rest of them, like if that was over tomorrow, and then the Taiwan China deal and all that stuff that's going on, if it was just over, like the conflict, if we could get the absence of conflict, would we feel peace? And the answer is really no. It's never been that way. We would come up with something else to be unpeaceful about because that's really not where we lost our peace. We didn't lose our peace because of conflict in the world. And so he does a great job. He said, if all that went away, would you have peace? And then he talked about, well, how about, do you feel like your family is not normal? This is a week to discuss this, right? It's like everybody's coming for Thanksgiving, or you're going for Thanksgiving or something, or you're left alone for Thanksgiving. I got several patients that are that way. They're left alone for Thanksgiving. It's like, and they think, well, it's like not normal. And he was talking about if you went and spent 3 days with him, you would find out that he's not near as normal as you think. And that'd be the same thing with me. If you came and spent 3 days with me and Leslie, Yeah, with me and Leslie. If you came and spent 3 days with us in our house, you'd be like, you guys are, y'all are not as normal either, right? And so, and then he said, well, maybe it's just financial peace. Maybe it's like if you had enough money in your bank today, would that give you peace? Would that do it? If you hit the lottery and all of a sudden you don't have to worry about money for the rest of your life, would that do it? And it's so funny because you think each one of those things will do it. You think it's yeah, if everybody would just quit fighting and I had enough money in my bank to last me the rest of my life, I would just be so peaceful. But every single person that I listen to that has lots of money. Now, they all love having lots of money, and I'm not against having lots of money. And someday I hope I have lots of money. But he, they all say the same thing. It doesn't fix your problems. It doesn't give you peace. It just gives you easier life. You just things you can do, but it's not the answer, right? And so where does it come from? Where does peace come from? And I'm really gonna try to tie this in to our health. Okay. So I really am. I'm not just trying to preach tonight. But he talked about shalom. And who gave us that? Where is the origin of peace? Where does it come from? And where did it go astray? Where do we lose it? Right? And he talks about you've gone from Shema to Shabbat and you're waiting for shalom. And he's talking about when they brought Israel out of Egypt and they took them through this. They had to go through Shema where they listened to the Lord. And then they went into Shabbat where they had rest in the Lord, but they were waiting on this shalom, which was peace in the Lord. We are waiting for the way things ought to be or should be. That's what we're waiting for. If you got your wish and things were as they ought to be, then you would have like that's really what he makes the presentation that it's where you ought the way things ought to be. How if you could just write them out and you could say, okay, this is the way that it ought to be in the world. We ought to love each other. We ought to get along with each other. Everyone ought to have something to eat. Everyone ought to have something to wear, and a place to sleep, and all those things, right? This is the way it ought to be. We would have three things. We would have completeness, we would be whole, and we would be flourishing. If we could have it the way it ought to be, the way it should be. And that inability of having it the way it ought to be is where we lose our peace. It's like, and he said this has only happened in the garden. Then there was the fall. So when Adam and Eve were in the garden, is the way the story goes. When Adam and Eve were in the garden and God was walking with them every day and he was face to face with them in the garden, things were the way that they ought to be. And they were complete and they were whole and they were flourishing. And that was the way it was supposed to be. That was the way it was meant to be. And there was peace in that moment. And then they chose to do it their way. They chose to not listen to God. They chose to go on in their own story. They chose to eat from the tree of knowledge. They broke that peace. They went off in their own way. They broke Shema and experienced shame. They didn't listen to the Lord because the Lord said, don't eat from that tree. And as soon as they knew that they weren't supposed to eat from that tree, they separated themselves from God. And they went and hid. They didn't lose the presence of God. They lost the face of God. And that's really the biggest point. And that's where it starts to tie into me. And I really don't know for sure if it's only because it's my world. I don't know for sure if it's only because it's my job. I've been really thinking about this. Like, are you taking the stance that you're taking because it's the job that you do? If you didn't have this job, would you be taking a different stance? And how do I know that? It's like it would be an easy argument for someone to make. And if they made that argument, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with them. Like if I was coaching football, would I even care about any of this Cokes, or would I be eating turkey and dressing and and chocolate pie and all this stuff? I mean, I did it for a long time as a chiropractor, doing all this stuff. It's like, would I even care? Would I even care about any of this stuff when it comes to health? If someone said you wouldn't, I wouldn't argue with them. Okay? But it is my job. And it is what we do in wellness. And it is the things that I study on a daily basis to try to figure out how to keep everybody that I take care of well. And I can tell you that right there, that hits me in my heart. That's where it hits me in wellness. That is, they broke Shema. They stopped listening to the Lord. And then they felt the shame. And I know we do that when it comes to nutrition, and I know we do that when it comes to sleep, and I know we do that when it comes to our self-care and our relationship with others, and it creates subluxation in our body. We got to take a break. You got to stick around with us. When we get back, we're going to finish it up, and I really think it's going to be awesome. So just stick around with us for just a bit, and we'll be right back right after these messages. Yeah, I don't want to leave those guys on the radio without, the rest of this message. So if you guys got any questions, comments, you want to send me something. If you're on track with what we're talking about, something you want to talk about on the show, any comments that you'd like to make, send them to me. I'd love to get them. I appreciate them when I get them, and it's fun to have at least somebody that is out there listening to you. That you're not just sitting here talking to yourself every night from 6 to 7. But no, I see some of you guys out there. I really do appreciate that. And I totally get this. I thought years back, I heard Taylor Swift talk about when she was first on the scene way back in the day. I heard her say something about, I really do appreciate all my fans for supporting me. And I just thought about that, and I was like, dude, shut up. Like, your fans aren't going to your concerts because they're supporting you. Your fans are going to their concerts for themselves. They enjoy your music for themselves, and that's why they're there, right? And so that's what I really know about any of us. You're not going to spend an hour listening to me unless you're getting something for your life. I know how that goes. And so I hope that, some of this stuff, and these taking health to church things are a little hard because I need a week to prepare for this sermon instead of a day to prepare for this sermon. But it's not even a sermon, but this sharing this information. So I hope you're getting something. I hope it's helping you out. So that's how it's going. We got a couple more minutes before we get to it. Some deep stuff. And man, Tommy he was in a groove yesterday. He was in one of those Michael Jordan moments where he was like laying it on us, and it was just flowing through him, and it was great. It was really great. Okay, everybody, we're back. This is Life with Jason Clemmons. We are taking health to church tonight, and we're working through where we lost our peace, right? Where we lost our shalom. We lost it in the garden. We lost it in the garden when we lost our Shema. We stopped listening to the Lord. And when we stopped listening to the Lord, We broke the Shema and we experienced the shame. They lost the shalom because they lost their peace, because they had no Shabbat. They had no rest because they lost Shema. Should have heard Tommy break that down yesterday when he did it full speed. And it was like, yes, they stopped listening to the Lord, which caused them to lose their rest. And because today when you hear his voice, right? Today when you hear his voice, enter his rest. If you're not listening for his voice, you're going to lose Shema and you're going to lose Shabbat, and you ain't going to get any shalom, right? You're going to lose that because you're not listening. You've already lost it. And then you're not going to enter his rest. So you're going to be doing your own work, and good luck on that. Good luck and see how that works out for you, because that will wear you down, because the burdens of life without listening to the Lord is on, now you're on your own. And it's like, good luck with that one. And so you lose that rest, and now you've got no peace because those things are in the Lord, right? In true shalom, it is not something we go and get. Peace is not something we go and get. It's just a peace in the middle of the storm that we receive. Peace is something that we received. It's not something we go and get. We can't work ourselves into peace because that's not where we got it in the first place. It came with the package, right? It came with the package of earth. It came with it's like batteries included kind of deal. So we think if we work hard enough, maybe we can have some peace. And human beings over time, they tell us, I've listened to a lot of those guys talk. I've listened to a lot of successful people talk. And they say the same thing. They say, look, it's not where the peace comes from. It doesn't matter how many hours I work or how many things that I do. It's like, that's not where the peace comes from, right? Because peace is something that was given to us. And he said there's four things we all have in common. If we all sit down, if he sat down with us, just like I would say, if I sit down with you and I was to, and it was just you and I, and we were having a conversation, and you were telling me about some of the things that were disrupting your peace. And you were brutally honest, and no one was recording anything. It was just us having a conversation. He said there'd be four things that we would talk about. He said, number one, it would be the dumb things that we've done in our life. And that's so true. I mean, there's so many things. I just think about them all the time. I just think about the things that I've done that were just so stupid. Like, I can't believe I did that. Like, I don't even want to get into all the specifics of them, but that's one thing that disrupts our peace. It's like we think about them and we just won't let it go because they're just dumb things that you've done, right? Number two is time we were disillusioned that I was in control. There's a time that you think, I got this. I'm in control. But control is it's just such an illusion. It's not the way it works. We're not in control. There's a control that's given to us, but it's not something that we created. The third thing is times where I've been burned in love. And man, when he said that, I was like, ooh. Like, it was like, because how many, whether it's your family, your friends, your business partner, whatever, your spouse, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whatever the thing is that you trusted someone, you believed in someone, you made yourself vulnerable to someone, and then they just took it and they just destroyed it, and it just created this complete lack of peace. It was just like, man, And we know what that feels like. And all of us know what that feels like. And most of us have been on both sides of it. Most of us have been burned in love. And at the same time, we've been the one that burned someone else in love. And neither one of them fits. Neither one of them is nice to wear. It's really not that great being on either side of that thing, right? Because we don't feel any better about being the one that burned someone else. That hurts. That hurts that we did that to them, and it disrupts our peace, right? And then the last thing is you chase something so hard thinking it would bring you peace. When you think there's an arrival, you'll be disappointed. And that I've heard that so many times too. It's like Tom Brady wins 3 Super Bowls, and he's like, if I just win my 3rd Super Bowl, then I'll have arrived. Now I'm arrived. And it's like, and the day after the Super Bowl, it's like, what did he do? He went to work on the 4th Super Bowl, and then he went to work on the 5th Super Bowl, and then he went to work on the 6th Super Bowl, right? It's like it doesn't matter. It's like the same thing. I heard a chiropractor one time. I was eating supper with a chiropractor, and he talked about getting to 1,000 patient visits a week, because that's like a big deal in chiropractic. Like he was like, I remember how I worked so hard to get my practice to the level that I could see 1,000 people in a week. And that's 200 people a day for 5 days. That's busy, right? He was adjusting a lot of people to get to 1,000 people. And he said, I got to 1,000 people, and then it just let me down. I was so disappointed because there wasn't like a party that happened. There wasn't like the heavens opened up and the angels sang and all that sort of thing. He said it's like it was just the end of the week, and then we just started another week. He said we worked so hard to achieve that one thing, and then when we achieved that one thing, there was no peace in it. And it's like, yeah, that's it. And so he turned to his second favorite, and I could feel it. I can feel this coming. So I'm going to try as hard as I can not to get all choked up over this. But Numbers, his second favorite prayer, Numbers 6, 22 and 23. And he said to him, the pastor said this was the second most important prayer in all of the Bible. And it was so crazy because we just started season 3 of The Chosen last night, and we just watched the first episode of season 3, and it was shalom, shalom. They must have said shalom 100 times on that show in the season 3 episode 1. They just kept saying it back and forth to each other, shalom, shalom. And then Jesus, he did his Sermon on the Mount, and then he called all the people together, all of his group, his disciples and all of his group. And he said, hey, I'm going to take a break for a little while. You guys just go home and we'll call you back, but just stay in touch with one another. And he said, all right, you guys come up here close. And he said, I want to pray for you. And then he read Numbers 6, 22 and 23. And it says this. And this in 22, just to set it up, it says, the Lord said to Moses, tell Aaron and his sons, this is how you are to bless the Israelites. Say to them, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. And he made it was crazy because that was what the pastor talked about yesterday in church, and then that's what I watched that night on episode 3. And he said, the Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. The blessing ends in shalom. The blessing, that prayer ends in peace. And it's like, wait a minute. And they said, where did it come from? He turned his face towards you and gave you peace. That's where the peace comes from. It's in the Lord, right? God is the acting agent in all of this, was the statement. God is the one that is he's the verb in all this. He's the one that gives us the peace. That's where it comes from. That comes from that place. And man, when he talked about turning his face to you, now in athletics, in football, one of the vital things that we talk about in football, especially when you're tackling somebody or you're blocking somebody, is to face up on them. Like if you can square up on somebody and get right in front of them and then put your face in their chest. That's what we talk about when we teach tackling. We don't tackle with the top of the helmet. We tackle with the face. But we could talk about being faced up. And if you've ever been faced up to somebody, man, I just got it. Like when I heard that yesterday, I just got intimidated. I just got like, whew. And then I just thought about God facing up on me and how intimidating that would be. Like, I mean, it's just like, whew. And then it's like that, that song, I Could Only Imagine. Like, it's like, that's like, whoa. And then to think that it's not coming to, it's the being faced up to is not coming to you in judgment. It's coming to you in peace. Like the giver of all peace is facing up on you and giving you peace, like shalom. I knew this was going to happen. There was no way I was going to get through this with that because I could feel it. Like I could feel it yesterday. I could feel it yesterday when Tommy was talking about it. It's like he blesses you. There's 6 things that happens. He blesses you. God is pleased and delighted. God showers us with his very presence. And this is the part for me that it's so easy for me to see in wellness. This is the part for me where it makes so much sense because there's an order to the universe. There's an order to things when it comes to wellness. This is the same exact thing I see when I get preached this sermon to me. I get preached a sermon of wellness. It's like he's trying to tell you, look, it's not an accident. You didn't get diabetes on accident. You didn't get coronary artery disease on accident. You basically chose those things. You don't realize it until someone breaks it down to you that we choose our chronic disease. We choose our chronic disease because we don't want to shema. We don't want to listen. And we don't want to enter his rest today because we always say it's going to be tomorrow. That's what's so disgusting about that picture of the president and his son and Elon Musk and RFK on the deal when he had the picture of the McDonald's French fries, and he's like, our healthy eating starts tomorrow. And that's, to me, it's like, that's exactly right. It's not today. Today, when you heard his voice and you knew you weren't supposed to go have donuts for breakfast, that you went and had donuts anyway. And you chose to lose the blessing. You chose to lose the peace of health, the blessing of health. Not your salvation. You didn't choose to lose your salvation. You chose to lose the blessing of health. And the blessing of health comes in diagnosis form these days. The unblessing of health, the loss of the blessing of health comes in a diagnosis. So now you have a diagnosis. You have a diagnosis of arthritis, and you have a diagnosis of cancer, and you have a diagnosis of all these things. And it's like, when did you quit listening to the Lord? Well, Satan has created such a world that we live in that we don't even realize we're not even listening to the Lord. We don't even realize that we've stopped listening. We are like Adam and Eve in the garden without even shame. We don't even have any shame for the lack of listening to the Lord that we do these days. We just go on and just do it without any consolation whatsoever. We don't even care. We lose the blessing because he blessed us. He blessed us with his presence. He keeps us. May the Lord keep you and preserve you. Preserve you. That the first thing that when he said that yesterday, when he said preserve you, I just thought of the preserve yourselves. That's what I wrote down. He keeps us and preserves us. How does he do that? He tells us what we should do. He tells us what we should do by loving the Lord with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength, and loving your neighbor as yourself. That's the starting point of the whole thing right there. That's the starting point of wellness. If you want to get well, start right there. Start listening. Start knowing. And see, there's a giant boulder. There's a giant boulder. And I don't know if I'm right on this. I really don't. I don't know if the direction that I'm going is the right direction or not. But it's the direction that I'm going. When Jesus said, do not worry about what you eat, he was talking to a group of people who didn't have any idea what they were going to have for supper. He was talking to a group of people in a time that when he said, do not worry about what you eat, he wasn't talking about going and eating a bunch of hog, right? They had already told those people what to eat. He was not talking about do not worry about what you eat or what you wear or where all those things. Do not worry about that. Who can add another day to his life or whatever, an hour or a minute to his life by worrying, right? He wasn't saying that. I don't think he was saying that. And I don't know that I'm right, but I do believe that he was speaking to it in a time and place. If he was speaking today, do not worry about what you eat, doesn't free you to eat McDonald's French fries. It's not taking donuts and just saying taking them off the table, because they wouldn't have those things there anyway. Right? When he was eating with his disciples and he was eating with the group, what were they eating? They were eating fish. They were eating bread from seeds that were way different than they are today. They weren't eating processed food. So when I say he preserves ourselves, the pastor said what in the middle of the sermon yesterday. He said, "Yeah," and he said, like if we were to go have lunch after the service, like if we would go get a cheeseburger and fries and a Coke, or a pizza and a Coke, but a cheeseburger sounds pretty good to me. That's what the pastor said. Now maybe the pastor is right. Maybe it doesn't matter, and if it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter, right? But I can't see it that way. I can't see that the Lord just takes us off the hook and just says, go have a Coke. Don't worry about it if you have a Coke. To me, that's not what he's talking about in that scripture. What he's saying is, I am trying to preserve you. I preserve yourself. He shines his face on us. Jesus is the light. He shines his face on us. And what is light? It's lux. We are the light. What is subluxation? In chiropractic, subluxation is a state less than light. That's what lux is, right? I wrote this down in the middle of the sermon yesterday. I'm like, he is the light. He is the lux. He shows us what is good and what is beautiful, what is just, right? What is subluxation, less than a place of light. Subluxation means less than light. That is what I got so lucky. I got so lucky. Grace. I got so gracious. The graciousness poured upon me the day that I saw that. The day that I saw that right there. He tells us, he shows us what is good and what is beautiful. He shows us in our health what is good and what is beautiful by the light that's in our body. He shows us that. And the subluxation is the founding principle of chiropractic. It is the founding principle of health. If you're subluxated, you're in a state less than light. He shows you what is good. What do you do when you're subluxated? You go get an adjustment. Ment is a place. Ad means move toward what is just, what is fair, what is good, what is beautiful. That's what he does when he's given us peace. He does the same exact thing, right? In Isaiah 5:20, we call the light the darkness and the darkness light. And I want to read that tonight in Isaiah 5:20. Oh, I had the wrong one pulled up. Hang on. through 24. Oh, that's not Isaiah. Hang on. I marked the wrong one in my book. I apologize. Okay, 5:20. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness. Yeah, that's the world we live in with nutrition. That's the world we live in with sleep. That's the world we live in with our phone. That's the world we live in with our mental emotional stress. It's the light for darkness. Who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Why do they add the high fructose corn syrup to the Coke? Why do they add the high fructose corn syrup to the Coke? Because they added the salt in the Coke. And they got to cover the salt with the sweetness. That's the same thing they do with the processed food. They added the salt, and the salt is bitter and salty, right? You got the saltiness, and so what do? We're going to add this. We're going to add the sweetness to cover up that. And we put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Woe to those who are wise in their own eyes and clever in their own sight. Woe to those who are heroes at drinking wine and champions of mixing drinks. Woe to those who are heroes of drinking wine. Right? That is a spot there. So we call the light, right? We get things all twisted up and it messes up our health. And he is gracious to us. He is gracious to us because he gives us the opportunity to overcome some of these things we do in our health. He faces you and gives you peace. Being faced up is intimidating. It's a scary deal in football. Get faced up with some of those linebackers, it's like, whoa, I'm in a bad spot right now. But I just imagine being faced up with God and letting God give me peace. Like, what is more peaceful than that? What is more peaceful than that? To see his face, right? And he said, John 1:18, no one has seen the Lord. We didn't lose the presence of God. We lost the face of God. Adam and Eve didn't lose the presence, just his face. When Jesus was born, peace on earth, goodwill towards man. Jesus brought it back. Jesus brought back the peace on earth. That's where it is for us spiritually, but it's also there for us health-wise. There is a place for us there. John 14, if you've seen me, you've seen the face of God. We weren't created to die, we were created to live. This all came from the sermon yesterday. We weren't created to die, we were created to live. We don't have a cell in our body that says that we're supposed to have chronic disease. There's no gene for chronic disease, but we have chronic disease. Why? Shema. We've lost it. We've quit listening to the Lord. We've quit listening to the way. We've quit listening to the truth. We've quit entering the rest. Rest is parasympathetic. Rest is rest and recover. We're so busy in this right brain fight or flight response that we don't enter the rest. We need to be able to listen to the Lord, listen to the things that we know are right about health. Listen to those things and act in those things and enter the peace of those things. Right? He gives peace to you, peace with God and from God, so that you will have peace. John 16:33, so that you will have peace in me. John 14:27, let God turn his face to you and give you what ought to be. There it is, right there. Give us what ought to be. In health, there is what ought to be, and it is not chronic disease. There is peace in health, and there is a way that it's supposed to be achieved. And if we would just listen and we would just rest in it, and we would get that peace from it, right? So I hope that was good. I hope that helped, and I hope that it meant something to everybody out there. And I hope you guys have a great evening. We've run out of time. If there's anything I could do to help you, please send me a text or a message or whatever. Other than that, you guys have a great evening, and shalom.